Hello.
I was chairman of personnel before you made me deputy chairman of the board, and I was not compensated for being chairman of personnel. What were they trying to do?
We can hear him.
I had no idea.
We can hear Ron.
You need to bring home the butter and some milk.
Welcome, everybody. I've got a full agenda. Hopefully you can hear me. First item of business, the motion to approve the January 25th Active Tax and Tourism meeting. So motion by Doug, second by
John Stroud.
Supervisor Stroud. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. I can't vote. I'm not voting, just asking.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll go to action items. Resolution to authorize agreement with Adirondack Regional Tourism Council to continue a contractual relationship for the regional marketing services, including digital, social media, website, email marketing. The rationale, it's on your agenda. We're not going to spend more than $10,000 this year. We used to contribute $70,000, but I believe the state's not going to contribute anything towards this. Do I have a motion to make this resolution? Motion by Supervisor Hogan, second by Supervisor Stroud. Any committee discussion? All those in favor, show of hands. Opposed? Carried. Okay, discussion items. We have two visitors today, and I know that Mark has to leave first. Would it be all right, Christian, if Mark went first? Yes? Okay. So we're going to skip down to discussion item C, the Hospitality Task Force RFP. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read it. Does anybody have any questions? I thought it was well written and well prepared for us. Does anybody have any questions of Mark, or can we just go ahead and pass it? Supervisor Hogan.
Sorry, I don't want to hold this up. Mark, I think I've asked this before, and I'm sorry if I have.
Sure.
Some of that data looks like it can be gleaned through some, I feel like we've talked about some of that, like we've had access to that data. Are you just asking for it to be included in the RFP so that it's a comprehensive look at everything? Is that?
No, this RFP would bring us new data that we don't have. The previous studies that the county has commissioned and others have commissioned have data, and we're going through those to see if there's anything in terms of actionable ideas or recommendations that still might be revived and used. But we're really looking here for data on the most successful destinations with which we compete, to see what their best practices are and to benchmark our numbers against theirs. And that hasn't been the topic of any of the prior studies.
And we don't have access to that from any other sources?
We don't, not that I know of, and not that we've been able to glean from anybody, in the private or public sector.
And okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Claudia.
Thank you, Supervisor Garrity. How are we going to pay for this?
Well, our thought was, Claudia, to ask for the response to proposals and then take a look at that. We're hoping for a private-public sharing of the cost because it truly is a private-public partnership that would benefit both the taxpayers from the generation of additional sales tax and OCC tax and the private sector businesses. So we think a sharing is a fair way to approach it.
May I follow up, Chairman?
Sure, sure.
Do you have a ballpark of how much it's going to cost?
I don't, and I hesitate to sort of put a number on it. I think that will perhaps, change the kind of interest that we might get from potential proposers. All of a sudden, everybody will know what the number is they have to hit. So I just assume let the consulting firms give us their number, and then we can discuss whether we think there is a legitimate return on that investment for both the county and for the private sector.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Any other questions on the RFP for Mark?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, thank you. I thought we had problems getting information from other counties and so forth. They're very, very hesitant on giving out their success stories and so forth and so on. So I'm a little confused. Why do we think that they're now all of a sudden going to lay out what made them successful or not?
Yeah, great question. And that was a question that was posed at the tourism and occupancy tax meeting a month ago to Ad Workshop. And I think that two things. There are industry sources of data for all of these places and industry experts. So we may not get the information from the individual counties. We may get it from the businesses or from the literature or from the industry people who study those places. I agree. I think that probably most of the counties are not going to share this kind of information. But in many cases, it's not just one county. It's a regional organization. There's published data. There are media accounts. There are reports that the industry experts who track hospitality have. But to your point, one of the questions you'll see that we ask in the RFP is, how do you intend to get this information? So we understand better the sort of the credibility of their sources.
Okay, could I have a follow-up?
Sure. Yes.
So that's going to be a challenge getting that information, obviously. And the second thing is, from my business perspective, it's always nice to compare one thing to another thing. But, we're looking for information from Hershey, Pennsylvania, Cape Cod, Hampton Beach, Atlantic City. Every county, in my opinion, has their unique characteristics that either help people come in or don't help people come in, that encourage people to spend their dollars. So, although it sounds great, hey, let's compare it to Hershey, Pennsylvania. To me, that doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. Hershey, Pennsylvania has their own set of priorities, their own set of unique circumstances. So, unless you can convince me in a big way why comparing us to those type of places, Cape Cod and so on, and knowing that they're going to be very hesitant to give us information at all, I'm a little hesitant on spending money to kind of chase our tail a little bit.
Sure. Well, we are trying to compare their assets to ours, their natural assets and their facilities like that. Because you're right, that comparison wouldn't make much sense. What we're looking at is their performance. How much have they grown in terms of the revenue generated, in terms of tax revenue generated, versus how much we've grown? And then we take a look at what are the best performers, what are they doing differently than ours? And it may be that they have assets that are different, ours are they're more attractive, but it helps us understand what we need to do as a county in order to be able to expand the current hospitality and tourism season to a full year hospitality and tourism season. We see what the competition is doing better, and we have a better sense then of what we might be able to do.
And can I just interject? We did ask the hospitality group to give us their ideas of where to go. And these are some of the regions they asked to go into. And I think Mark has explained it very well in this proposals that we will send out. And a lot of this is going to depend on who we get to give us this information. I think it puts a lot of onus on the bidder, the person that comes in and says, okay, I can do this. It's just like best practices. I question best practices. Will we get the best practices? But it'll be on the bidder to come back and say, yeah, I can do that for you. And then they're going to have to deliver. So I think, partnering up with the hospitality group is important, and getting their input on the regions they feel are important is a good idea. Supervisor Stroud, you're on mute, but go ahead.
All right, thank you. Well, I agree. The RFP looks well written to me. And you know what? It's just an RFP. And when we get the proposals in, I've never had a situation where I didn't learn something from going over the proposals. And then you can always question the proposers and you learn more. This is a win-win situation.
I believe so. Yes. Any other questions about the RFP or any other questions for Mark?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Who's that?
that's me, Ryan.
Oh, yes, Ryan. You're hard to hear for me, but that must be my age.
I'll try to speak louder.
Thank you.
Better. Just a question in terms of execution here. Are we going to give this outline to the purchasing department and have them work it into an RFP?
That was the intent.
Okay, I would just ask that we have some attention in that RFP itself. We're going to need to ask those who respond to it to lay out what their process will be, what their timeline will be, what their expected deliverables are. We also, if we're not doing a low bid here, we need to, in that RFP, specify what evaluation criteria we're using.
Okay. All good items, Ryan.
Chairman, it's Mike.
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just have a question with regards to what Ryan said. Does that mean that now whatever information is gleaned from here becomes foilable and we need to share it with the rest of the world? It is what we're driving for, is some kind of competitive information that we can use to make ourselves better. I'd hate for other regions to be able to get that same information, and can we somehow protect it? Or maybe a question for Mark, do we really even need to worry about that?
That's not a question I can answer. Attorney or Mark, do you?
I'm glad to answer. Our intent, because we are in part using public money, was to share the information. I think that the information is out there. We may be one of several, obviously, regions who are looking at the same kind of competitive information. And we'd like to make it available to businesses, hospitality businesses throughout Warren County, so they all benefit from this intelligence.
Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Hogan, did you have a question?
No, I don't want to hold this up. I was just going to ask if we had bounced this off Julie Butler, but I think it's clear that it hasn't been through her.
No.
Okay.
No, we need permission to move it forward.
Gotcha.
So, Supervisor Wild?
I'll make that motion if we need to.
We have a motion by Supervisor Wild. We have a second by Supervisor Stroud
I'll second.
to move the RFP forward. Any other discussions? Any other questions? All those in favor, raise your hand by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mark. You
Thank you,
get to your meeting on
Supervisor.
time.
Thank you, Supervisor Garrity.
Okay, we'll be talking. Kristen, I just want to get the treasurer out of the way. I think he has some news on Oxytax. Is the treasurer there?
Yes, I'm here, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. As of last week, we have collected for 2020, $4,174,846. That is 15.3% below what we collected in 2019, or $641,000. I want to caution you, though, that we still have a lot of money coming in. We will not be receiving all of the payments for 2020 until probably middle to the end of March of this year. So this figure will change, get a little bit more positive. I don't know how much, but it will get more positive. Question.
Any questions for Supervisor Wild?
Chairman, thank you. And this question is from Mike Swan. Mike, I know I did some research a while back to find out what other counties in New York State did in terms of their OCTAX year over year. Next time you report, can you give us an idea of what some of the other counties, maybe Tompkins County, Finger Lakes, to see what happened to their OCTAX over this same past year? I'd really like to see that. I think it'd be helpful.
I sure can.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Christian Dutcher. And before you start talking about America, I would just want to thank you for your efforts on Winterfest. I mean, I did go down to the village this weekend. It's it's remarkable what you folks have put together. And I know you did a lot of the coordination, and thank you to all the Lake George businesses for being open. So go ahead. I know there was some questions about Americade, why you picked the September date, and the conflict maybe with the Balloon Fest. So does somebody want to start it off? John, did you have some questions? Did you want to start it off, John Stroud?
Well, my concerns was that, if we had done some communication ahead of time, we could have maybe perhaps avoided a conflict, because it appears to me that having both events go on simultaneously are certainly going to stress out our law enforcement, not to mention traffic. I don't know if we can change it, but I know the Balloon Festival folks are not happy. And if Brad McGowan's on, perhaps he could second that. They've been doing the Balloon Festival at that time of the year, so it's kind of their providence. So I don't know if Americade could be moved, but there's a lot of concern about the two events. We love both events. Having the two events at the same time, and it just might not be a good thing to do.
I know that everybody on the committee should have got a listing of all the rallies that start actually in another week or so in Florida, and hopefully you had a chance to look at that. And Kristen, we discussed that at length, why this date was picked. So I'm not a motorcycle rallyist, but he gave us a good explanation. So I'll let Kristen explain some of what we've discussed. So go ahead, take it over.
Supervisor Stroud, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's less than ideal for everyone involved to have two major events on top of each other. And I'll be making changes to Americade, ones that under normal circumstances I wouldn't have to make, but I'll have to make because we're on top of the Balloon Festival, and they make for a slightly worse Americade. It's so the consequences of laying it on top of another event are already being felt internally. And I only share that with you because it's an indication that it's really a choice that I wish that I didn't have to make. The way that I got to that date was June, I think everybody understands that June is just too risky. For the longest time, I was holding out hope that we could make it work in June, but it's clear that only under the absolute most ideal circumstances could it happen in June. And frankly, I think we all realize that it's not going to happen in June. And it's very likely to be permissible in July as well, which immediately made me start looking at August. Naturally, August is peak tourism season in the area. Rates are already high. Occupancy is already full. The gain for the community and the limited resources, or the taffy pull of or the tug of war pull over resources in August made August out of the question. The first weekend of September, a couple of the key venues that I use are occupied, one of which, the Woods Park Festival space, is occupied by Dave Ebman's concerts. The second week is the Adirondack Hot Rod Show. Obviously, we can't overlay it on top of them. The third week is the Ocean City Motorcycle Rally, which is a rally in Ocean City. And it's a major event. And I simply couldn't run Americade at the same time as Ocean City because I bring in all these national partners, motorcycle factories like Honda, Indian, things like that, Yamaha, as well as vendors. And if you put two major events on top of each other, it's not worth running either event. So that doesn't work, which pushes me to the last weekend of September, which is the Balloon Festival. And then beyond that, you get into October, where I am already pushing it so late into the riding season. For motorcyclists, September is a weird month in that it's beautiful riding, but a lot of people are thinking that the season is ending. And October is really out of the question. People are thinking about, snowmobiling when it comes to October, at least for a lot of motorcyclists. And to make matters worse, the first week of October has the Las Vegas motorcycle event, a major motorcycle event in the country, which means that they would have gone from Maryland all the way out, and they would be scheduled to be in Las Vegas the first week of October, and the routing just doesn't work. And the industry is already thinking in terms of south and west once you get into the late fall and for the rest of the winter season. So as odd as it seems, I really only had one weekend that I could slide America to. All the other weekends either had venue conflicts or a major event already scheduled, and that was the end of September. And when I was considering the end of September, I want to make sure that people don't think that I just made this decision internally without reaching out to partners. In retrospect, what I should have done is emailed everyone on this call and others saying, this is what I'm thinking about. Instead, what I did is I reached out to what I thought were the point people in the community and in the county saying, this is what I'm doing. And I got a thumbs up across the board for that date range. I'll also add that I spoke with the Lake George Chamber, and on Saturday of Balloon Fest weekend, they're only at 55%. So I'm not poo-pooing the fact that there are real capacity issues overlaying these two events on top of each other. That is absolutely a valid concern. But with Lake George only being 55% on Saturday, and with a lot of the outlying community not getting much in the way of reservations on that Saturday, I've spoken to a couple of additional lodging partners in various towns surrounding Lake George, and also recognizing, sadly, that following this past 12 months, it's going to have a negative impact on people's ability to go for a week or several days worth of travel, hotel bills, travel bills, meals, and so forth. So internally, regardless of what date Americaid lands on, we are expecting that the economy, even though there are some really very positive signs that are out there for discretionary travel for something like Americaid, I think it's going to have a negative effect. I think we're going to see our numbers slightly down because of that. And as soon as you change the dates from an early June or whatever your regular dates are, as soon as you change it from those regular dates, it's disruptive in a negative way. So we're going to be facing two hits: the COVID economy and this change of date will very likely and the fact that it's so late in the season, that I think it's going to have, I think we're going to see a smaller Americaid than usual. So as much as there are limited resources because of the two events simultaneous, the impact that Americaid is going to have will be less than what we've probably grown accustomed to in early June. And I'm sorry for taking so much time. Yep, go ahead.
All right, well, Christian, I know from being on the Balloon Festival committee, and I'm also a motorcyclist, so I can see both sides. But I know that when we have the Balloon Festival, one of the biggest management problems that we have is traffic management.
Yep.
And we utilize almost to capacity what Warren County Sheriff's Office has to offer on Quaker Road and on the side roads and County Line Road. We use them. And they start at 3 o'clock in the morning, along with some of us who volunteer to help. I'm just, and then we need law enforcement up in the village where you have your wonderful events and wonderful motorcycles. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but I'm just wondering, how are we going to have the resources to be able to manage these in a responsible manner? That's a question that we got to work on.
Yep.
Shouldn't that be asked to Sheriff LaFar?
I have. I
Sure.
spoke with Sheriff LaFar about it, and we recognize the reality. Honestly, of all the things that I thought about when I was moving it to the late September, I thought police will be the one thing where it's just it's a finite resource, and it's already stretched thin because of the Balloon Festival. And I recognize, all right, I'm going to have to make some changes to Americaid. I referenced it a little bit before, but I'll go into a little bit more specifics. There are a couple of things that we do that are particularly police intensive, and I'm going to scrap them for 2021. They are, in the morning, during the weekdays, we have guided ride departures where these large groups of people depart for the Adirondacks and Vermont and so forth, and they go all over the place. And what the police very kindly do is they allow these groups to remain intact as they navigate through these intersections to get out and out of town. I can't do that this year. The police is already committed to the Balloon Festival. It is, as you mentioned correctly, it's their dates. I'm stepping on their dates, so I have to be really cognizant of that. So I said, okay, we'll scrap that. We actually, I don't have the answer yet, but internally we're wrestling with, all right, how are we going to do this? Namely, how do we get these groups out in the early morning without having to tax the police in any way? On Saturday, for example, we have a charity ride, the Ride for Kids. It's a ride that benefits the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. It starts in Glens Falls, ends up in Lake George, and it's police led the whole way. I'm going to scrap that. We're going to figure out another way to do some sort of charitable benefit ride, but not requiring any police presence. So we're identifying those things that are police intensive for Americaid that we can control, those things, those events that we create, and we're just doing away with them for 2021.
Okay.
Supervisor Hogan and then Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Chairman. So what I'm hearing is the rides that are really the only way that your event spreads out to other corners of the county are not happening.
No, the way in which they'll depart out of the village will change. The rides will still exist, but our historic process of giving them sort of the VIP treatment, getting out of town intact with the intersections blocked with police, we're going to do away with the police, with the blocking of the intersections. So the rides will still take place. We're just going to get them out in a different way. We might stage outside of town instead of staging inside of the village. We might send them out in much smaller groups that can navigate intersections. We actually haven't arrived at what the answer is, but we know that we have to come up with a different way.
This may be a little shameless, but late September is a very slow time in the northern part of the county, and we have some very big parking lots.
Not shameless at all. In fact, I may be emailing you about that.
Yeah.
Truly.
Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, thank you. And to add on to
I
Supervisor,
see.
there are also some beautiful.
I can't hear you, Brad. Can you speak into your mic?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
All right. To add on to Supervisor Hogan there are some beautiful rides up in her neck of the woods too. So that one of the things I was thinking, because I've been in touch with John, and we've been talking back and forth. But we also have the Washington County Sheriffs, which we have a lot of people that come over from Washington County. I'm wondering if we have reached out to see if they can help us with any of this, because they also benefit for some of the festivals that happen over here in Warren County. On top of that, the state police, have we, reached out to the state police to maybe help us out? And also our volunteer fire departments, I know they have the road safety people out there with lights and jackets and people in that area that can help us direct traffic. Really the traffic was one of them. The other thing I really wanted to look at was, the hotel rooms. When talking about it in the past, the hotel rooms put out deals for the people that come in with the balloons and that to, give discounts for the people that are involved with the balloons. And if we're at full capacity, are we going to be able to get those discounts for the people that are coming in for the balloons? There's a lot of people that come from out of town, the majority of them that bring in the balloons for this festival. These are, just all the concerns that I have, along with the restaurants. Are we going to be able to handle all these people in here if we're still at a 50 or 75% capacity rate? These are just the questions that I've been rambling in my head. Thank you.
Supervisor Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along the lines of what Supervisor McGowan said, I'm curious about the incremental costs that we might incur to have supplemental police, and in addition to that, supplemental EMS, because we now have a significant crowd. And there has to be some kind of idea in terms of what we need in terms of the bare minimum for police and for EMS. Both are pretty important when you have large crowd gatherings. So I'd wonder if we can get a sense of how we can address that and whether or not it's going to cost some money for Christian to make some of this stuff happen, or whether it's going to fall on the burden of the county. Thank you.
Kristen, do you care to comment?
Well, a variety of comments to both Supervisor McGowan's and Supervisor Wild's comments. Supervisor McGowan, I wasn't aware that Washington County could act as police in our county, so that is interesting, and I'll definitely be reaching out to them. We have reached out to the New York State Police and local volunteer EMS and fire. That's a good point. I'll reach out to the various partners to see what can be done there, because it's not like we actually need policing. We just need somebody to close down intersections if we go that route. Regarding Supervisor Wild's comments, frankly, I want to think about that. I guess I would have to learn more about what EMS services are used from the village for the balloon festival. And if they're drawing from the same pool of resources, then that's obviously something that I need to look at. My understanding was that they don't, but I need to look closer at that. And I'm wondering who a good partner would be to reach out. And I guess I'll have to just reach out to the individual EMS services locally and find out what role they play with the Balloon Fest and see how that would impact our planning.
Thank you, Christian. I didn't expect an answer. Get back to us. It's great.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be able to help to go with OAS to,
We can't hear a word you're saying, Brad. Are you talking to us?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Yes. Can we go to the OES department on the emergency services side to see what the coordination of calls that go out?
Sure. Okay. Any other questions, Chris? I think you have a list of things, we need to coordinate, and we can certainly talk about them. Joanne, do you want to just talk a little bit about the rooms, how you, excuse me, so you looked at the rooms for that week?
I did go back and take a look at the Smith Trend report for September of 2019. The supply for the month of September for the branded properties that subscribe to Smith Trend is 6,860. On most weekends, the demand was in the high 4,000s. On Balloon Fest weekend, 5,300, 5,800. So most of the Smith Trend properties were rented. Again, this does not include the smaller, hotel, motels and cottages, cabins. So I can't factor those in. But if the CVB said only 55%, it looks like more than that on my report.
Okay. Any other questions for Kristen? Well, thank you for taking the time. And like I said, I'd like to, again, congratulate you on Winterfest. I think it's been hugely successful. So
thank you.
Thank
by the
you.
way, later this
Chairman?
Yes, Brad.
Sorry. Joanne, can you get the figures on how many rooms for Americade were eaten up for a comparison to, that maybe we can get a number?
I do have those numbers for Americade that happens in June of 19, 18, 17. I can provide those.
Or just like I said, because if we jump up to 5,300 on Balloon Festival with a 6,000 cap on the the major ones, even though Americade might be a little less, but then you don't know either, because people will say, hey, let's hit both at the same time, so I'm just concerned. I think we can pull this off. It's just going to take a little bit more organizing and probably a lot of favor calling. Thank you.
Okay, Kristen, you have the floor.
I was just going to say that by the end of this week, I'm going to circulate a report that'll give kind of a State of the Union for the Winterfest project. Ideally giving a little bit of insight into what net proceeds are going to be pulled out of this that go back to the county. 100% of the net proceeds go back to the county. And I this week is the week where I'm going to pull all this together and get a sense. I won't have a definite answer until all the bills come in, but I'm pretty confident that it's going to turn, some profit, all of which goes back to the county.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I appreciate it. And I made it down to Village this weekend and they were doing pretty busy.
Good. It was absolutely a community effort. There were so many different parties involved in making this thing happen. I'm just one piece of the puzzle.
That's good. Well, thank you. Any other questions before we let Kristen go? We do have some work to do, John and Brad. We certainly will sit down and capture some of these key points in the next week or so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda was the Oxy tax funding application. I know everybody should have got one in your packet. I hope you've had time to study it. And I want to thank the tourism department and Lisa for going to work on this. We tried to capture the best of all worlds. I'd like to say it's perfect. I'm sure somebody will find some stuff that we can add to it in the future. This is for the events that the county will fund. So I'll take any questions please go. John, you're on mute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought they did a wonderful job, and I run it by the town board, and we compared it to ours and so forth. And it would be nice if we had a uniform application that all the municipalities would use, and even, this might go there. If you're looking to approve it today as is, that's fine. I had some suggestions, but I can also wait and we can amend it later. I mean, sometimes you just want to get a start on these things.
I think that was a game plan, John, that we would put something out that we thought could work for the county events. Then if the communities can continue to use what they use, or they can continue to use something that Lisa put out for the town events also. It's not going to be mandatory. I understand home rule with that. So any other comments about the application?
Need a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Supervisor Wild?
Make it a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Supervisor Hogan, do you have a question or a second? Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor to adopt this application for Warren County, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Okay, Lisa, good job. Joanne, we'll go with this. Next, there was a discussion about a tourism development and events coordinator. Again, you have the outline in your packet. So we'll take any questions about what this position would do. Are there any questions? Yes, Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Where does this intersect with what the CVB does?
It's my understanding that this is steered more towards athletic type events. It would also help us analyze the events that come into the county. It would, well, I guess, I could say read it. Joanne, I need some help here on this one.
I would say the CVB is attracting meetings, conventions, small groups, and the wedding markets. And this position would come up with a regional event strategy, work with the current event organizers, perhaps work with some of the towns on smaller events, put together a public relations strategy behind all of the events that are taking place throughout the county, and make it one unifying strategy, and help some of these smaller events come back with some ROI and economic impact, which some of the larger events are able to do that. So the Wine and Food Fest, for example, does a remarkable job, but some of the smaller events do struggle with that. And meeting, public safety guidelines, there is quite a bit to it that would not fall under the responsibility of our contract with the CVB.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wild.
I just worry about adding more staff, and I've heard that the tourism budget for just the compensation and benefits is like $1 million. So we're going to add to that, which in essence puts more pressure on our ability to increase our OCTAX, especially with our OCTAX down. So I have concerns about adding more staff. Thank you.
I do believe, though, one of the ideas behind this position would that it would generate more oxy tax. It would raise our oxy tax revenues to the county, and the position would pay for itself, so to speak, in the future.
Well, if I may, then
Yes.
I might be more amenable to this if it's a temporary position, so that we can see if that's actually true, and it does actually bring us more than it's costing us.
Okay. Anyone else? Supervisor Conover, sure.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm normally I would be supportive of this, perhaps with the kind of amendment that Supervisor Wild is suggesting. But unless and until such time as the town supplemental money is dealt with, I don't know why we're out there spending even more money. And I just might want to add that, just refresh everybody's memory that back when the town supplemental was cut, the projection was $3 million. Some of us at that time suggested delay and wait. The staff said $3.5 million. Today, I'm not sure what the treasurer reported to you, but it's obviously north of $4 million with a pretty good fund balance. So my feeling is that before we start talking about spending additional dollars, we should restore the money to the towns. Thank you.
Thank you. It was 4-1, Ron. It should be up to 4-3, I would say, by the end of March, excuse me.
Just one more. That's great. We can wait till April. I think that was a recommendation. Was it from the treasurer? Somebody who said let's wait till at least April, make sure all the money comes in. So, Bolton, we're good with that. I don't know about Lake George, Dennis. I don't know your situation if April's getting too late. But as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to be supportive of a lot of these things. But I think that before we start spending additional dollars, the supplemental dollars to the towns needs to be restored. Thank you.
Supervisor Dickinson, I know you're leaning forward.
I had to unmute myself.
Okay.
I have to agree with Ron. I'm not in favor of that. We have a fairly decent number of employees in the tourism department. Their benefits and payroll are ballooning and they never end. They go on forever. They're legacy costs. So I'd be very hesitant to put somebody on down there, especially at this point in time where everything is still up in turmoil with the COVID thing. So I'm going to agree with Ron, and I think we definitely should table this.
Okay, well, Supervisor Bramer, and then
Yes, on that note, I'll make a motion that we move this forward to add this position. Thank you.
we have a motion by Supervisor Bramer to move the position forward. Supervisor, any other comments? Supervisor Stroud, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering if perhaps we could save money by outsourcing this, say, to perhaps the Lake George Regional Chamber and CBB, that, then the benefits and the health insurance and all that we pay, and we secure a service and from a third party. So we might be able to save some money by considering outsourcing this to another party and achieve the same goals.
Okay. Supervisor Dickinson.
It's a very good point, John. And that was the effort when we revived the CVB and started funding it, is let them pay the legacy costs. And they've been doing very well. And they've been working with and in parallel to the tourism department. And I think that's a very good idea. We should at least explore that before we make any rash decisions here.
Okay. Supervisor Bramer.
I'm not asking that we take money away from the CVB. we did just give them an extra, I think 100,000, they're up to 500,000, and they are an outside agency. We don't get as much detail on what they are doing, the activities that they are up to. I know that we don't get audited financials from them. I don't want to go there because I got in trouble with that with some other outside contracts. But I think that with the potential source of revenue here, it's a good idea to keep this in-house, make sure that we have control over what we are doing, what we have this person doing, and I think that we should move forward. So again, I stand by my motion to move this forward with a detailed presentation of the job description that's in our resolution packet.
Okay, hang on, Supervisor Hogan. You're on mute.
Thank you. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised by everybody's reaction. I reading this is a position that is designed to give us the data that we've been asking for, and to be answerable to us with all the information that we've been saying we want over and over again. So I'm kind of shocked by everybody. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I would not support outsourcing the position to the CVB. I would support no position over that. But I really do feel like this is exactly what we've been looking for. Somebody to compile. I mean, part of what this position is somebody to, well, manage events for one thing. I mean, we just had a whole discussion about events colliding, and that could have been avoided had we had somebody in this position, but also about compiling all this data and feeding it back to us and helping to Joanne and the people who are already, I mean, maxed out there, to help us increase our OCC tax. So I'm sort of surprised.
Are you seconding the motion?
I am. I'm just
we have
sort
a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion?
Yes.
Supervisor, yes. Supervisor Amanda. Sorry,
Like to speak?
I can't hear you.
Mr. Merlino would like to speak.
Okay, he's on the committee. Hang on, Dennis.
Yeah, I got it.
Just one point, we lost one person in tourism in late fall, and there's 42,000 in this year's budget to replace that person, and that's why we can add some of this money to hiring this person.
Okay, did you hear that, Dennis?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Dennis, go ahead.
You're missing the whole point here. And you're glossing right over this. The CVB gives us all the information we need. They've never withheld any information from us. You can wave your hands all you want, Claudia.
Easy. Let's stick to it.
I worked with them firsthand. They'll give you any information you want. They're no different than the tourism department. And we need to get this OCC tax money spread out. We can't hoard all this money at the county. And I again stress the fact that we do not want to make the tourism department too big. We are paying a lot of money in OCC tax to carry the tourism department and all the legacy costs.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to remind all of the supervisors that we've just passed a resolution to speak with one another with respect. And it's on the table now. It's in writing. I think we need to hold one another to that as well.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer, you're on mute.
Thank you, Chairman. Just quickly, especially since Supervisor Hogan made that comment about being respectful, I apologize to Supervisor Dickinson. My hand waving was in regard to, I thought you were saying we have all the data that we need with respect to tourism, not with respect to the CVB, because we did just go out for an RFP to collect data. So I thought that's what you were referring to, not that, I mean, if we need more information from the CVB, I'm glad to hear that they will be willing to provide it to us.
Okay. And Supervisor Conover?
Accepted, Claudia. Thank you.
You're on mute. You're mute. Yeah, there we go.
Just one more time. There were a number of supervisors, many still on this committee, that made a commitment that should the OCC tax funding restore itself, that the funding to the towns would be restored. That hasn't happened. And yet today, the OCC tax committee is considering spending, I don't even know how much, salary and benefits, 40, 50, 60, 70,000, I don't know, before it's all said and done, on adding a new position in the tourism department. So I guess my question to the committee would be, so we're going to wait till April, and then what? I mean, what's the sense of this? Some of us that operate tourism economies would like to know. I mean, is the committee going to restore the funding? I mean, the supplemental package, just to repeat myself, the supplemental package that was originally adopted by this board that included the supplements to the town and also included supplemental funding to the city of Glens Falls, Cool Arena, as an example, and some other supplemental funding. Most, if not all of that supplemental funding has been restored. The supplemental funding to the towns has not been restored.
Right.
And I guess what I'm saying is what gives here? I mean, I'm not saying I can't support this. I'm saying in what order are we going to consider these things?
Can I speak to that, Ron?
Sure.
I wanted to, I ran out of time to go and get all the documentations on how most of the communities ended up at the end of 2020. We only have 3 of the reports in from the communities on how they ended up with oxy-tax at the end of 2020. My game plan for March was to bring back something where we could put some of the money back into the communities. I don't know if we can do the full spending plan but I was hoping to have all the reports. Now, only 3 towns have turned in their reports. And everybody, so far, people have various degrees of balances left in oxy-tax going forward. So I was going to use that to try to convince the committee next month that we should reinstitute some of the spending plan, but I wanted to do it on a basis of who has a lot of money, who doesn't have money. Also, I've repeatedly said this, that the village and the town of Lake George have most of the events, and the village and the town of Lake George should get a majority of the oxy-tax spending plan money, or whatever you want to call it. I know some of my colleagues don't like the name, we could call it whatever, but I would like to deal with that in March, Ron, and I'm serious about it. And I can only say to the town supervisors, please get your reports into the county so we can use that, so we understand financially where people ended up and how quickly we can move on restoring some of the funding, because I'd like to get back on track and do it the right way. And that's the goal. I was looking at the information today. I just haven't had a chance, being new to this and having the responsibility of trying to work this out. I really want to do it. I told you I would last year when I was budget officer, and I mean what I say.
Mr. Chairman, I have the greatest respect for you, and I have the greatest respect for every member of this committee. Here in Bolton, we collect it before we spend it. We may be one of the few communities left that does it that way, although I see the supervisor from Johnsburg, Andrea Hogan, saying that I think they just converted themselves to doing it that way. And so, you know,
a lot of us
we like to know what we have before we spend it.
Yes.
But again, I'm not going to tell you that it bankrupts the town of Bolton. I'm not suggesting that. What I am saying, though, is that it makes me a little nervous when I start hearing about new expenditures coming through Warren County when the supplement to the towns has not been restored.
Yes.
But as I say, I'm patient, and I'm not saying I can't support this proposal. I'm saying in what order.
Okay. I know the chairwoman, Seaver, would like to address the board. Amanda, did you have something?
Yes, Ryan would like to speak too.
Okay, I think Chairwoman Seaver was first, and then Ryan.
Thank you, Chairman Garrity. I'll defer. I'll make a comment after our administrator addresses this. Thank you.
Okay, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to put the finances in context here. Towards the end of last year, when we were discussing a potential restoration of spending plan amounts, we were using a revenue projection for 2020 of $4 million. And we're going to be significantly north of that, as the treasurer pointed out towards the beginning of the meeting. So that's number one. It's in the context of $4 million being enough to do somewhat of a restoration. We're actually going to be far north of that dollar amount for last year. And the second piece is just a general piece about this position. A lot of the things that we've talked about for the past 3 years that I've witnessed this committee and the tourism committee talking about, or the OCTEX committee rather, That's what we're trying to capture in this position, is going to a year-round tourism destination, doing an event strategy that's a little more holistic, that reaches out more to the localities, that helping out with our analysis of these events to determine where we can get the biggest bang for our buck and generate additional revenue than we already do, making the money work for us, in other words. And also from a personal perspective, the compliance piece is important. It's public safety, as was mentioned earlier. It's also COVID safety. I've been, hours a day, that's 7 days a week, at least 3 hours a day, I'm spending on the phone with businesses. And it's been that way since the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm not going to be here 2 months from now. And that work has to fall somewhere. So that's the reason it's coming to you now.
Okay, thanks. Supervisor Seaver, did you want to address the board?
I would like to for a moment, if you don't mind, Chairman Garrity. First, let me say thank you so much for taking this on. I appreciate that you didn't decline it and that you took it on with open eyes and looking at things a little differently. By doing that, you saw an opportunity to increase revenue into a department that wasn't going to be totally dependent upon occupancy tax. This position is created with the idea that we can create and work together in a public-private relationship, increase revenues to the county, provide relief and support for, some would argue, if not the most important position, our county administrator. That we've all gotten emails in 2 in the morning and watched how hard he's been working and our staff has been working. So to me, it made a lot of sense to start talking about a position that would provide COVID support, safety planning, increased revenue, looking at occupancy tax. Supervisor Garrity, when it wasn't popular, you made a tough decision about looking at occupancy tax in the spending plan. I'm not suggesting that this is a popularity contest. I'm suggesting that we do what's right for our taxpayers, and it may not always be what's popular, but it is what is responsible, ethical, and I certainly hope everyone on this board is committed to doing things legally and with authority. So that being said, what we have in front of us today is an excellent opportunity to show our community that we are ready and waiting when our residents and our visitors want to come into Warren County. We are going to do it in a safe way. We are going to do it in a responsible way. We are going to help with the coordination and calendar of events, and we will certainly support our tourism department 1,000% or 100%. I shouldn't say 1,000, but 100%. And they have that commitment wholeheartedly for me on that. And I would hope this board would be of the same mindset. Recently, we had a discussion with Mayor Hall. He's very excited about a possibility to work with the city of Glens Falls to ensure that we are truly a regional county here in Warren County and that we're focused on those efforts. So Supervisor Garrity, thank you for taking this on. Thank you for looking at this in a different set of eyes and for being supportive. This was actually Supervisor Merlino's idea. We had talked quite a bit about the opportunity to bring someone in that could elevate tourism to the next level and work in such a collaborative process. And I am so grateful for his expertise and his support and his ideas with this. So I'm hopeful this is going to pass on to a full board vote and we can get back to doing business and worry a little less about politics and a lot more about our community. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just stop there? We have a motion. We have a second, and I just want to say one of the ideas behind this was for this position to pay for itself. And if we find out at the end of 1 year the position doesn't pay for itself, then we have to make changes. And so that's why I'm comfortable the way the job description was written. And some of the ideas behind this, and monetarily, I have been talking with the administrator, and he really feels we could, excuse me, pay for this position. And so right now, I'd like to call a vote on whether we move ahead with, Dennis, I'd really like to call a vote on moving ahead with this. Go ahead. One last comment.
I don't see how you can, how you're going to justify paying for this job. What are you going to do to justify paying for it? How are you going to figure it out?
We're going to use the finances that we saved from the position that left. And then we probably would have to grab maybe 23,000 from another pot. That's about it. to pay for this position.
That's what I object to. When somebody left, I thought that was great. We need to start cutting back.
Okay. Well, we also need to grow too. And the hospital, they want us to grow. So.
That's what we got other organizations for too.
Okay. Supervisor Wild, you're on mute. So
Working fast out. I've been doing that all day. Just can I make an amendment or offer to make an amendment that this is a temporary position? I'd like to do that so that we're not locked into a permanent position. Let's make sure that it's actually driving the results that we're looking for.
okay, I'll ask Supervisor Bramer if she's a member. Would you accept that? And
Sure, Supervisor Wild.
Thank you.
what'd she say?
I think she said yes.
Okay, I'm having a hard time. Supervisor Hogan, are you you're okay with that? Amending the resolution? Okay, we have a motion, a second, amending. If it doesn't, it's tied to revenues generated, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, show of hands to put this out. Anybody opposed? Carried. We'll move ahead with it. Thank you all. Good discussion. Dennis, we'll make you proud. I know you're not proud right now, but we will. Okay.
I appreciate that, Kevin.
I'm sorry, my throat is. Joanne, would you like to speak to short-term rentals?
Thank you. Maybe I will share my screen, and I do have the short-term rental report for the month of January. Can everyone see that? I did send it out this morning. I just received it from the vendor last Thursday, so I needed some time to take a look at it. Sorry, I didn't get it out sooner. So the new vendor is AirDNA. It is a similar report to all the rooms, but all the rooms reported Airbnb as one set of numbers and HomeAway VRBO as a second set of numbers. So AirDNA combined that, which made it much easier for me, and the price was similar, actually a little bit less. So the first chart at the top of the screen is January compared to last year, and you can see that we are up 53%. And I will scroll down to the last 12 months. The demand is up 40%. So the breakdown is, if you look at the top chart, it's in entire place, entire home is the majority of the rentals. And there's another chart here with the average daily rate is considerably higher. I can share the entire report, but for the sake of the meeting, I wanted to show you the demand and how much it has increased just in this month of January and from 2020 to 2021.
So if you look at the revenue dollars, Joanne, it's $2,486,269 were spent in the month of January 2021, correct? On the short-term rentals. That's a lot of money. If you multiply that by 4%, it's around $96,000 in oxy tax. If it was just strictly 4% of that coming into the county, correct?
That's correct. And some of that revenue money, I will note, is room cleaning fees. So even if it's 2 million instead of 2,000,004, and then you also add that private room together, it's still a considerable amount of money. So take a look down at the last 12 months, $42 million in revenue, less cleaning fees is still a considerable amount of revenue that we can collect on.
I mean, that's a big number, and that's affecting every community in the county. And that's why we need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to collect this revenue. It's a big number, big number. Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. A quick question for Joanne, and I'm sorry I didn't get this to you earlier, but you'd have a breakdown by community in terms of where this is happening?
Like George?
That is not part of the report that I subscribe to. There are supplemental reports that we could consider purchasing, but I do not purchase that report.
I would be curious just to see if we could get a snapshot for the year. not a continual annual subscription, but maybe once a year, get a report in terms of where this is all coming from.
Right. It's a big number.
It is a very,
Sure. I can ask for that report for a one-time fee. Perhaps 2019 would be a good year to have that one-time report.
Yes. Any other questions?
actually, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind,
No, go ahead.
1920, 19 and 20, that would be awesome.
Okay. I will look into that and report that.
Okay. Anybody else? Ron? You're on mute, Ron.
Considering STR regulations, a permit system here in Bolton, and one of the requirements of that system to apply for a permit is you have to demonstrate that you've registered with the county.
Oh,
And
that's
there are quite a few STRs in Bolton, believe me. Thank you.
Yeah. That is good. Anybody else? Okay, item 2 was Mike, you're going to withdraw your the $3,500 request for the study, because we did pass out to go to the RFP on the study for the county. So are you going to withdraw that $3,500?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll withdraw that. I would trust the hospitality group and what they're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. There still is much more we got to bring in front of the committee in March. And as I promised the 2 gentlemen from around the lake, we will have information. And hopefully, please go back to your communities and get your reports in. It just helps a little bit. I don't want anybody destitute. Supervisor Hogan.
It does have a March 15th date on it.
I understand, but it goes to the end of December, right?
We're working on it.
All right. I guess, Don, do we have comments?
Hi, Chairman Garrity. At this time, no, we do not have any public comments on YouTube.
Will. Okay. Any other comments from anybody in the boardroom on Zoom? Okay, a motion to adjourn. Okay, motion by Supervisor Wild, second by Supervisor Stroud. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it. We got a lot covered today, a lot of good stuff. Thank you.
Good job, Chairman.
Thank you. All right. See you, everybody. Okay.